Hi everybody. Give us a few minutes. The bees are getting their act together, and we're getting our act together, and we're waiting for more people to show up. So the fun's going to begin really, really soon.
Hi everyone, I'm Haley. I'm the program manager for Planet Bee Foundation. Today we are here to have a virtual Hive Dive Live for the 10th anniversary Bay Area Science Festival. We are so excited to be here. We usually go to the Bay Area Science Festival in person, but we're just as excited to be here with you virtually. And we will open up the hives in a second, but first I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Haley. We're here with our master beekeeper, Bill, over here. Say hi, Bill.
Hi everybody.
And then we're also here with our executive director and founder, Deborah.
Hi, everyone.
So we're gonna open up some hives and see what is inside today. We're gonna see 50,000 honeybees or more if we open multiple hives. And we're gonna talk about bee behavior, anatomy, why bees are so important, why they're struggling, and ways we can help. But first, while we're waiting for a couple more people to join, I just wanted to let you guys know that we normally have seen 30,000 kids since our inception 10 years ago in person. And right now with COVID, we have adapted our wonderful education programs to fit the needs of the new normal. So you can get us in your classroom virtually anywhere in the United States. So it would be awesome if you know a teacher, or if you're a parent and you know a teacher, let them know about our programs, because we can come into your classroom and teach you about bees. We have 5 awesome virtual eSTEM programs, and they are all either low or no cost. 92% of our programs were free last year for schools that are qualifying with their free and reduced cost lunch ratio. So we have awesome video lessons that are completely hands-off for teachers, or we have real-time STEM lessons with our Planet Bee educator who will walk your classroom through science and math. in relation to bees. They are really, really cool, and we're so excited to be able to make an even greater impact than ever before. So, first I wanted to talk about why bees are important. I feel like a lot of people have heard that bees are struggling. They've heard the term save the bees. But why do we need them? We need bees because we like food and we like diversity in our food. So bees, they go to flowers, and when they go to flowers, they pollinate them. We're going to talk about that later. And when they pollinate them, those flowers turn into fruit. So I always ask kids, do humans like fruit? Do you like fruit? And usually
I like fruit.
Bill likes fruit. I like fruit. And that's usually a yes. So do we need to help the bees? Yes, we definitely do, because without them, we will lose a ton of diversity in our diet. We'll lose all of our favorite fruits, and that is sad. So we definitely want to help the bees. And we'll tell you more about how. But for now, I'm going to throw it over to Beekeeper Bill. If you guys have any questions, ask them in the chat, and we will gladly get to them over this next hour. So, thanks.
Hi everybody. So we're going to go into this big hive here, but I'm going to ask Deb if she can put the camera over to this small teaching hive, the entrance, just for a second, because I think it's really interesting. If you watch, if you can see, can they see the entrance, Deb?
Yep, I'm gonna zoom in.
So I want you to look at the entrance to this hive. It's just a little circle, but it's really interesting. If you look at the bees going in and out, you'll have bees at the entrance there, and what they're doing, they're security guard bees, and they're testing, smelling for their pheromone, and they're touching antennas. You can watch them, and they're checking to make sure that the bees that are coming in actually really do belong to this hive. And also, I'm looking to see, I haven't seen it in a second, but we're going to look for bees coming back, and a lot of times you can see they have pollen on their hind legs in their pollen catcher, and you can see them bringing back pollen into the hive. And I saw, obviously before we weren't filming, I saw a bunch of them, and now of course when I'm looking for it, the bees are not cooperating. But I just wanted to show you.
Bill, if you want to look at the other hive, I can swing over if you wanted to go to that one too.
Oh, okay. So
I'll just
you can
slide
see here,
over here
and
in
what you need to see,
case you see what you want on that one.
the common myth is that the hives always are painted white, and years ago they were painted white because in the farmers' fields you could see the white hives in either the field of brown or the field of green, and it was easy to pick out the hives. But the bees really could care less what color the hive is. And the really interesting thing is that bees can pick out symbols on their hives or different shapes on their hives. So if you have hives close together, you can paint them different colors and put different shapes on them. So you can see this one is brightly colored, but it has nice shapes on it. And this one doesn't have any at all. And that helps the bees differentiate between which hive is which, and helps them recognize their own hive. But you know what? I think we'll go into the hive over here now, the big hive.
Okay.
So what I have in my hand here is a hive tool, and a hive tool is probably one of the most important tools a beekeeper can have, and it's used to pry open a hive because bees secrete a substance called propolis, and I always say it's like bee super glue. It seals the hive up, it seals everything up, and it keeps out moisture and helps keep out disease, and it helps sterilize the hive. The other important tool you have is a smoker, and you can see my little smoker here. I'm having some smoke come out, and the reason this is important is bees communicate a lot by pheromone, and pheromone is a smell. So I was talking about security guard bees in the front of the hive of these other hives. So here, if it's a little bit in the shadows, you won't be able to see it. But there's bees in the front here. If I walk like this, sometimes you can almost see bees following me around. That's a little bit in the shadow, Deb. I don't think you'll be able to get it. But what I'll do is, to counteract the pheromone that I'm coming into the hive, they give off a long pheromone. And what I'll do is, you don't have to do much smoke, just a couple of puffs, right in the entrance. And that distracts the bees from, if they did give off that long pheromone, the other bees won't be able to smell it, and this way the bees won't be defensive or protective of the hive. Just give a little more like that. And I'm going to try to be quiet here to see if you can hear the crack, and that's the propolis that seals it all up. So we're going to go like that, and look at that. Look at all those bees on the top here. Oh. Look at that. So this hive is this is a really, really strong hive. I put a new queen in the beginning of the year in this hive, and maybe if we're lucky, we'll get to see her. So I'm just putting a little smoke in the top here. And what I'm going to do is, I want you to listen. I'm going to be really quiet right now. You hear that? Oh, did you hear that crack?
Look at all the honey.
Oh my goodness, look at this hive. Look at that honey. Look at that. That is like the coolest thing ever. But look at all these bees hard at work. These are all female worker bees right here. I'm just going to be quiet for a second and let you guys take a look. So I'm going to put this down now. And we're going to give it another puff of smoke. And I'm going to pull out a frame of honey for you guys. And let's see, let's pull out this one here. And you'll see what capped honey looks like. Now, bees are generally pretty laid back and pretty gentle. They don't want to sting. They only sting as a defensive measure. And because of the barbs in their stingers, they die when they sting a mammal or sting a person. And you see I'm using my hive tool here. And the reason is, I'm going to actually, this is, here, this is propolis here. Right there, see on my fingertip there? That's the substance they secrete, and it's made of rosin, wax, honey, and some secretions from the bees, and they mix it all together, and this, like I said, it glues everything together. Some people like to eat it. It's supposed to have like really good properties, health properties for you. You can grind it up and put it in your cereal or your yogurt or your oatmeal. I tried eating it once, just plain right out of the hive. It's pretty chewy, and plain it tastes like cardboard.
Bill, I have a propolis throat spray that I use when I have a sore throat, and it really works well.
Yeah, so propolis is antibacterial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it works on your sore throat.
Mm-hmm. So we've had a couple questions come in so far. One of the questions early on was when I was doing the intro, I was not wearing my bee suit yet all the way. So I just put it on. And so I just wanted to mention that these are honeybees, European honeybees, and they're pretty calm and relaxed. The only time they want to sting you is if they're really upset or nervous when someone might be breaking into their hive. But if you see a bee out in the world, that bee is not going to just sting you. That bee is looking for flowers. And so that's why I feel pretty comfortable not wearing my suit when I'm just calmly talking about bees.
All right. I'm going to go down to the next box because this box is pretty well soft. Oh, do you hear that crack? That was a propolis. I'm going to go down to this box because there's going to be honey in here too. This is, oh, there we go. Lots of honey in here. Oh, and it's really heavy. You hear me groaning in my back. It's really, really heavy. But this is a little better here. It's not as packed down here. And we'll be able to, and so yeah, bees, like I said, they're really gentle. Where I get my bees from, they're bred to be gentle. They're bred to be hygienic. They're bred to be good honey producers. And they're bred to be tolerant of mites. And we'll talk about mites a little later. But that's a pest that attaches to mites and gives them the disease. Wow, I'm really having a hard time here getting in here. Oh, here we go. Now it's loosening up. Yeah. Whoa. Well, there we go. And you see I'm being really slow and I'm being really gentle because I don't want to disturb the bees. Wow, this frame is heavy. It's all full of honey. Oh, and it's packed in there. Oh, look at this. So I'm gonna walk over here a little more. So this is all capped honey. That is, oh, this would taste so good. So this is all nectar that the bees have gathered from different plants in the area, and they'll fly in a 3-mile radius from this hive. And to gather nectar, and they'll bring it back here. And I can tell, I bet you this is really like some wildflowers, or it might be eucalyptus nectar, because it's really dark and it's really thick and brown, a brownish color. Really, really pretty. Different types of nectar will have different color, and of course different types of nectar will give you different types of tasting honey. But you can see what happens is they put the nectar in the cells, and they suck it in, they put it back, and the nectar will mix in with their with enzymes in their storage stomach, and they put it out, and then they'll flap their wings over it, and it will dehydrate. And when it reaches a certain consistency, they'll cap it up. Viscosity.
You can lean that against the hive if you want, so you don't have to hold it, and I can just move the camera
Oh
closer.
no, I'm fine. I was fine holding
Yeah,
it.
there
Was
we
I
go.
shaking a little?
Just a little, but that's okay, guys. We're gonna get you so that it's a little easier to watch. There
So
we
this
go.
is all capped honey here, and you can see the bees like. Oh, well, actually, you should never stand in front of the hive at the entrance, and that's what I'm doing right now. Don't do this. But you can see they're not even concerned about me. It's a beautiful sunny day here in the southern end of San Francisco. There's no wind, the sun's out, and so the bees really aren't paying attention to me at all. But you can see, look at this. This is all wax here. It's all wax. And these bees are just busy now. They're trying to seal it back up again because I broke the seal a little bit. Can I go to the next one, Deb? Or
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to take this box off too, because these top 2 boxes are all full of honey, and I want to see if I can get down to the next box where we can see where the bees are doing their living and they're hatching and they're breeding, where the queen's laying eggs. I'm just going to give them a little more smoke. I just want to keep them, I want to keep these girls nice and happy. While I'm doing that, I can talk a little bit about what type of bees are in the hive. So the hive is a totally female-dominated society. Like Haley said before, there's probably roughly 50,000 bees in here. And the dogs are barking at my bees. And so there's probably about 50,000 bees, because this is a really strong, mature hive. Oh my goodness.
Bill, how much do you think that frame actually weighs? Like each frame and then the box. What would you estimate that at?
I'd say this big box I took out already, probably weighs 25 to 30 pounds.
Wow. And how many frames are in each box?
I have 8 frame equipment.
Mm-hmm. And a frame is referred to as it's the foundation that the honeycomb is built on. So when Bill pulled out that piece, that was called a frame. So there's 8 of them in each of these boxes, and they lie sort of on a ridge, so they're kind of suspended, and in between those frames is where the bees make the wax. And we're later in the season, so they've had a lot. Oh, wow. That is so cool.
Oh, man. So this is a burr comb on the top that they built out. Bees will take advantage of every single space that's in the hive. It's pretty neat. And so they took advantage of some space between the boxes. They took advantage of it, and they made some wax. And that's the other thing, the wax. Bees have 6 wax glands underneath on their bottoms, on their abdomens, and they have and they secrete the wax in sheets like sheetrock or plywood, and then they take it with their mandibles and they chew it, and they form the cells that go on the frame, and that's how they build it out.
And we had someone ask about that in the comments, and that is one of the jobs that the bees do. And someone asked, how do they know what job to do? Are they born with that job? So can you tell us how they know what to do, Bill?
They know what to do as they're born. They're much like children, like a human being's children, is that they get more complicated jobs as they grow older. So the first job they have is when they're born, the first thing they do is clean out the cell they were born in, which is really interesting.
That's about the first 2 days.
Yeah. And then as they get older and their brains become more sophisticated, they get more sophisticated jobs. So the bees that you see flying around, oh, this is awesome. This is good. Whoa. So the bees you see flying around are the oldest bees, and the worker bee will live maybe 25 to 45 days depending on the season. And so the ones you see flying around are over 20 days old, and they have the most sophisticated brains, and they're the ones who are going out pollinating and gathering nectar and coming back to the hive.
So it's the same bee that evolves over time. Its brain contracts and expands as it goes through the jobs, and they have different jobs, and eventually around the 4th week they become a forager bee, and that's what Bill's referring to. So the bees that you see flying around are older than the bees that are on the frame, because the ones that are on the frame are doing a different job.
So these right here, you see, these are younger bees right here. These are nurse bees, and their job is to take care of the larva. So this is a really cool frame. So what you have here, you have capped honey on the edges. And then if you look right here, I'm going to get out of the light, right here you have pollen that the bees have brought back, that they pounded down into cells. Now I want you to look at the cells. Isn't this amazing? They're all almost exactly the same size. This is so cool. They're six-sided, and look, they're all the same size. Bees are into geometry. They have nothing to measure this by. They do this by instinct. They do this, and they make it themselves. So what you have here is capped honey, stored pollen, and you see it's like in a row. It's like a semicircle. Well, now what do you think is here in the middle here? This is capped brood, so the queen has come by here and she's laid eggs, and this is covered brood you see here. And I think if you look closely, I'm going to try to stay out of the light, in a couple of spots you can see some uncapped brood. Now this is a pretty good brood pattern. Oh, you see a bee is getting ready to be born here. She's eating her way out of the cell. So you can see, like this bee, she might have just been born and she's cleaning that cell out so the queen can come by again and lay an egg. So you can see right here in a couple of spots, you can see some uncapped larvae, and they're white. They look like little white slugs. They're curled up inside the cell in the bottom. And when they reach a certain stage, what happens is the bees will come by and cover it up, and the bees, just like a caterpillar into a butterfly, they go through a metamorphosis. So right now they're looking like this little tiny white slug. It gets covered up, and then they go through a metamorphosis of becoming a bee. And like I said, you got one, she's slowly eating the wax up, and inside they're born, they're facing up. So their face is towards the wax, so when they're ready to hatch, they eat away the covering of the wax, and then they pop out. So like I said, these are all girl bees. These are all girl worker bees. They live 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the time of the year. And they do all the work in the hives. This time of year, the hive is starting to contract a little because it's starting to get a little colder out. So there's not, the hive isn't as active. I'm going to, oh, this side's even better. Let me turn this around.
Nice.
Because this hive has this side of the frame has a lot more covered brood. And when I say it's a good brood pattern, you can see what the queen's going by and she's laying eggs in every single cell. And all these bees are hard at work. They're taking care of the larvae. They're keeping the brood warm. They're cleaning out the cells. And you can see here again, it's a beautiful, in the corners, capped honey. The next row is stored pollen, and then all in the middle is capped brood and uncapped brood. Like I said, here's some uncapped brood right in here.
Let's try to see the larva. Can you scoot it more vertically and then hold it really still? So can you guys see inside those hexagonal cells? I can see on the top right here. Where's my shoop? Right there. You can see some white stuff in there, and those are larvae. Those are
baby
babies.
bees.
And it's so cool that we saw one that was getting born on the other side. Awesome.
Now, somewhere in here is the queen. I suspect she's in the bottom box, and I'm not going to go down there. I don't want to disturb the bees too much. Because every time you go into the hive, you send them back a few days. Because bees are creatures of habit. So in one hive, so like I said, there's definitely 50,000 bees in this one hive. And so if the bees are living, let's say on an average of 30 days, what do you think happens? How many eggs a day do you think the queen has to lay to keep up if they're living for 30 days and there's 50,000 worker bees in here, how many eggs a day do you think she has to lay to keep that population up? Any guesses? You want me to tell you?
Tell us.
She's going to lay between 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. And that's her only job. Once she mates and she's in the hive, she'll never leave again. And all she does is she'll lay eggs, 1,500 a day. And she'll live for maybe 2 to 4 years. And then she'll just lay eggs all the time.
Let's look at these. What are they doing?
Right now, there's some honey dripping, so they're sucking the honey up, and they're going to repack it into another empty cell. So they don't want to lose that honey, so they're protecting it, they're saving it, they're storing it. Bees are really we say worker bees, busy as a bee, and that's why worker bees don't live that long, because they're busy doing work every single day of their life. They work, and they work, and they work. It's really interesting. And there are some boy bees in here. They're called drones. This time of year, you're not really going to see drones when things start to get colder out, and the fall and winter's coming. Drones usually live for about 6 months, from April through November. They only serve one purpose, is to mate with the queen, but not mate with the queen from their hive. They'll mate with another queen from another hive, and what they'll do is they'll go out on drone flights like 2 or 3 times a day, and they'll fly maybe 1.5 to 3 miles from their hive, and it's called a drone highway. And they just go up and down. They're looking for a pheromone. Now, if the queen in this hive has to mate, she'll fly maybe 6 to 8 miles away, so she won't mate with a drone from her own hive. But the queen only has to mate once in her life, and she has enough fertilized eggs to lay how many eggs a day? Yeah, that's right, 1,500 eggs a day. You're right. Thank you for telling me that. So she can do that for the rest of her life, so she only has to mate once. So drones only around, so if they don't mate with the queen, they're just hanging out, going on their mating flights and coming back to the hive. But the one strange thing about drones is that they don't have stingers. They don't collect pollen, they don't collect nectar, they don't protect the hive. So the worker bees have to feed them and protect them and keep them warm. And drones eat a lot. I mean, they eat a lot. They're big and muscular, and they eat a lot. So in the fall, when there's not as much food to be had or to gather, the worker bees will kick the drones out of the hive, or won't feed them anymore, and the drones will die off like in November, and then more drones will hatch in April. So you only see drones in a hive, early summer, late spring, early summer through late summer, and then they start to die off or they get kicked out of the hive.
So the boy bees don't do any work at all?
They do not do any work at all. They are lazy. Well, maybe I shouldn't have said that. They're not lazy. They only have one purpose in life, and that's what they do. See, now that bee that was on my mask, she was attracted to the CO2 that I'm breathing out, and when they smell that pheromone, when they smell that, they're attracted to it, because then they're getting a little defensive now, because I've had this open for a while, and I mean, if you look at it, there's no bees going after me. They're not bouncing off or anything. They're not trying to sting me. And that's what I'm saying. I could probably stand here. So they're attracted to the honey that got on my hand. And they're just crawling on me. And, they're just as happy as can be.
So Bill was mentioning drones, and since we haven't seen one yet, but I bet we will, I wanted to show the 3 types of honeybees.
Mm-hmm.
Deb mentioned the worker bee, and you told us all about them and their jobs. And this is the one that is 99% of the hive. They're all female. The worker bees are all girls. And then we just learned that the boy bees, the males, also known as the drones, don't do any of the jobs. And they, you can see, are much bigger. Their wings are longer, their eyes are really big so that they can catch the queen in the mating flight. And they're really muscly so they can fly super fast. And then who do we think this is? This is the last one. This is the queen. So this is the other female bee, but there's only one of her. And she is the biggest bee in the hive. She has an extra large abdomen. And we learned that is because she has 1,500 to 2,000 eggs to lay every day, which can be up to 2 million eggs in her lifetime. So she has little tiny wings because she doesn't really leave the hive except for that first mating flight.
Do we have any other questions right now, or?
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you talk about what happens in a swarm?
Oh yeah, swarms are pretty cool. So swarms happen.
I'm going to just move the camera a little bit,
Yeah.
So that we can get a better light on the hive. Are you going to pull out any more frames?
No, I'm not, because these bees are getting a little sick of me messing around with their house.
Would you like, so after you're done, I can put it towards the entrance of a hive. That might be fun to watch.
Yeah, you know what? While I'm doing this, I can talk, and won't you just watch the entrance of that teaching hive?
Okay.
That'll probably be the good, because these bees
All right.
are getting a little sick of me.
I want to make sure that we can hear you, though.
And I want to answer some people's questions. Someone asked, do bees drink water? And bees definitely drink water. They need to survive, and they get thirsty too. So one way to help the bees is by putting out a water dish in your yard. You can put a shallow dish out with some rocks or pebbles, and then keep it filled with fresh water, and they can come and take a drink.
Any other questions?
We just answered the
Bill
drone.
is going to talk about his swarm, but he stepped away for a sec. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different jobs that a bee has in the hive. The first day of their life, as Bill was saying, they're born, and they're born in fully grown, and then they clean out their cell. And if you think about it, why would a bee have to clean its cell out the minute it's born? Well, how many eggs a day did we say the queen was laying? 1,500 to 2,000 a day. And how many bees are in a hive? Maybe like 50,000. So think about how much room that you need, right? They have to, that bee is born, and the queen, the nurse bee is cleaning out her cell so that the queen can immediately lay an egg.
So Deb, I just found a drone, which is pretty
excellent.
rare for this time of year.
Okay, I'm gonna put it onto your hand.
Okay.
Let me just.
This is exciting
camera.
because they're really prevalent in the spring, but when the colony is contracting, like Bill mentioned, in the fall, the drones are less prevalent. Oh, where'd he go?
Oh, there he is
There
on
he
the ground.
is. Okay, I'll get him. And so the cool thing about drones, I don't think I mentioned this when I was holding the poster, is that they don't sting. They don't even have stingers. So I could be holding this guy without gloves on, and I could feel totally fine about that. And
Let
he
me-
keeps falling on the ground.
Yeah, we're losing him.
He's kind of small too.
Alrighty. You can put him in my hand if you
Okay.
want. Okay, let me, in the meantime, while she's trying for that, I'll focus in on this hive so you guys have something fun to watch.
Okay. He seems like a slow moving guy.
Alrighty,
The
here we
drones don't move
are.
that fast. They're very slow and methodical.
Let me get your hand there. Alrighty, I think we got him.
Oh, he's so cute.
All right, can
He's got-
you go down a little lower?
He's
There
got
we
big
are.
eyes.
It's hard to see.
I can imagine.
Okay, where is he? Oh, there he is.
He's so cute. So can you guys tell that his abdomen is more rounded than a worker bee? That's because he doesn't have a stinger.
Yeah.
And he's a pretty small one. They're usually much bigger. All right, he wants to be on the ground.
Okay, let's talk about, Haley, do you want to talk about why bees are important for the ecosystem and food and everything?
Sure, I can definitely do that. But first, someone just asked how bees communicate. So I know Bill had talked about the pheromones that they emit, but we could also talk about the waggle dance. Has anyone heard
Yeah,
of the
I was gonna
waggle
say
dance?
that is so fun.
Yeah. Can you explain the waggle dance, Bill, for our audience?
The waggle dance is what it is, like, envision it. It's basically the bees are inside the hive and they'll go through a rotation of like they'll make a figure eight, or they'll go in a circle, they'll go in a counter clockwise or clockwise. And what they do is they're trying to communicate where, well, one is like they're telling each other where a good source of nectar is. So what they'll do is they'll go in the hive and they'll actually wiggle their butt. It is so funny. So they go in and they'll do a figure eight, and what it is, how big it is or what direction they go in, is telling the other bees, hey, go in this direction, do this.
Hi, guys.
And what they do is they're wiggling their butt. I mean, it's probably much better than I do it.
Yes.
But they're wiggling their butts and they're going around, and then they also touch each other's antennas like this, and they're telling, and that's how they communicate too. So they communicate through sight, through movement, and through smell. And so a lot of it's important is the touching of the antennas, and they're transmitting smells that way of the nectar or the pollen that they collected. But the really cool thing, and I was trying to look when I had the frames up to see if I could see any bees doing a waggle dance, and I didn't see it. Sometimes you can see inside the hive, the bees will be crawling on a frame and they'll stick their rear ends like almost like straight up, and they wiggle them around, and their wings are flapping really straight, and they're wiggling their rear ends, and they'll go in certain directions, and it's really a sight to see. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see that today.
So what happens is the forager bee, remember they're 4 to 6 weeks old, right? So they're the smartest bees. So they will fly out of the hive in a circle, and they will, like the first 100 yards, if they find a waggle, if they find a source, they come right back. And then they do something called the round dance. If they continue on, they do something called the waggle dance. So they can fly in a 3-mile radius, and they're looking, and there's a bunch of forager bees. So a forager bee finds one, and they go back to the hive to the other forager bees. They crawl in the hive, and now they have to tell everybody, where is this nectar, and how far away is it, and what direction. So they look at the sun. They come in and they say, okay, to the other bees, the sun is here, but the nectar's there. And by the way, it's 2 miles away, and it's really great. So they will do a little circle, and as they waggle, they will go in the direction that the nectar is. And they come back and they do another circle, and they waggle in the direction of the nectar. But how do the other bees know? They say, oh, the sun is here, and the nectar is here. Oh, that looks like a 35-degree angle. I'm going to fly out to a 35-degree angle. The number of times that they go around is the length, the distance. It's really great, they waggle really hard. So like the better the nectar, the harder they waggle. Then they stop for a second and they do what Bill said, whereas they put their wings out and they kind of expand their whole body because they're kind of, they've picked up that taste. So all the other bees kind of take a little taste and they're sniffing and they're touching with antennas and they go, okay, I got it. So they will fly out and try to get the nectar and then they'll come back. But of course, remember that the sun is moving all day long, right? So that angle is going to change. The other thing that's really neat is, so this has happened to us. Let's say, well, right now I'm gonna pull the, not this second, I will pull the camera in to look at, we have some honey there. So the other bees in the neighborhood might be like, hey, I found a really great nectar source. I'm gonna go get it. And so they're going back to their hive and they're doing the waggle dance. But then we clean up and we move this and the bees come back and they're like, what? It's supposed to be there. So if we leave something out like a little jar of honey and all the bees in the neighborhood know about it and they tell all the other bees to come back and we move that jar, bees will still be coming back to that spot for a couple hours because they're like, what happened to it? It's supposed to be here. And remember that bees are going to about 50 to 100 flowers at a time. And they do kind of like to concentrate on one flower. Like if it's a lavender, they kind of stay in that area. And then they go back to the hive and they actually hand it off to another bee. The nectar, they have something called the carrying stomach. And in that carrying stomach, they have enzymes. There's also a stomach to eat. So they're collecting the nectar, and the nectar is the sweet part of the flower. You've probably even seen that, or like you've picked sour grass and you kind of like eat it for a second and you taste it. So that's sort of what the honeybees do. So they'll see the flower, and actually they can't see red. And a lot of flowers have petals that are open and sort of have that stripes. And so when a bee sees that, those stripes are actually like, it says like landing pad, here it is, come get it. So the bee will, I see the nectar. So they crawl head first and they have a long tongue, which we're gonna see in 1 second over here. It's called a proboscis. And they drink up the nectar, and they put it in that carrying stomach, and then they're going to like 50 to 100 flowers. Now they've got it full, and they have to bring it back to the hive. So while it's in there, there's enzymes in there, and it's breaking down the nectar because they can't, bees can't eat the nectar straight. Native bees can, some of them. There's a bunch of different species of native bees, but honeybees can't do that, so they've got to process it. So they go back to the hive, and you will see in a hive that two bees can be like going like this. So the proboscis from both bees are out and are transferring the honey, and then the honeymaker bee, which is called the middle-aged bee, will put it in their stomach. And remember, it's a carrying stomach, it's not the eating stomach. So they will process that. And the way they process it, you probably heard that honey is bee vomit. Well, it's actually not, because it's not coming out of their stomach, it's their carrying stomach. They have to spit it out. They spit it out into the cell, and then they suck it up. And they spit it out, and they suck it up, and they're processing it in their stomach with enzymes. And when it's like quote unquote ready, they will say, okay, that one's good. And then they'll get more nectar, and they continue that process until the cell is filled. And then in the meantime, bees are standing over that, flapping their wings, so they're dehydrating it. And finally, when they feel it's ready, they take a little bit of honey and a little bit of nectar and a little bit of pollen, and they kind of make a cap. That's actually called bee bread, and they can also make that in addition to that cap to feed the babies. I don't know if you guys talked about it because I stepped away for a sec. Anyway, so that they'll be like capped off. So I didn't know, did we get to show a frame with that? Some pollen and some nectar?
We did.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So you got to see that. So that bee will keep going back. So remember, 1,500 to 2,000 flowers a day. All right, do you want to see a proboscis and a bee eating nectar? It might be cool.
And so their tongue is actually shaped like a straw,
Right.
which is so cool because we can make our tongues into a straw
let's
shape.
see if we can find, there were some bees here trying to get this nectar. Let me see if we can find any honey on the ground that the bees are trying to
I
find.
see one here. Is she drinking any honey? Let's see.
I think, yep, they were just there. The bees are so busy. So, did we talk about the different parts of the bee yet? I mean, here's a fun fact. Did you know that bees have 5 eyes? Which is really cool because, oops, oh, do you see them? Are they talking? They're talking.
They
Look,
are.
look. So you see that the abdomen is going up and they're communicating, right? They're probably talking about the nectar source, right? So they were communicating, which probably means they're from the same hive. See that?
Yeah,
Well, you can
the
see the
raised
parts of the
abdomen.
bees. So here's the other cool thing. Sometimes people will confuse a bee with a yellow jacket, right? Or even sometimes flies can mimic a bee, right? So a bee will have 4 wings. So if you, are you able to hold the camera steady? Probably, right? See if you can count 4 wings. They're sort of like 2 big wings and 2 small wings. And they have 3 segments, like all insects. And we said they have 5 eyes. So they've got those 2 big eyes that everybody knows. It sort of looks like a kaleidoscope, right? But they actually have 3 little eyes in the top of their head. And that is to see shadows and shapes like Bill was talking about. Do like to pump when they do things. Do you see them? Oh, look. Even their heart. So the head is like ours where it has a brain. And then that middle section that's all furry and cute, that's where the muscles are and the wings, right? So that is where they fly and that's where they move. Oh, this is excellent. So you can see the parts of the brain. So anyway, the body, sorry. If there's any, like kids in school, you might even be studying this. And see if you can see how many legs they have. So they actually have 6 legs. And sometimes some insects like flies, they will mimic a bee. They kind of look like a bee, but you can tell they're not a bee because they don't have antennas, right? Necessarily, or their antennas are like 2 knobs, and they have 2 wings instead of 4. And the other thing is, some people do confuse, like I said, a yellow jacket with a honeybee. And a honeybee is from way back when, long ago. In ancient times, they did descend from yellow jackets, but they did change. So,
Ooh, take a look at this one. Can you guys see its proboscis?
So that's that long tongue that's coming out. So they are different from a yellow jacket in the way that they can sting once and then they can't sting again. And the reason is their stinger is in their abdomen. It's like deep inside. So right now, when we were out here, the bees, oh, here's a yellow jacket, Haley. You can see the difference right now. Yep, there's a yellow jacket. So this, it just moved. This yellow jacket wants to steal the honey because yellow jackets, they eat.
Well, actually, the yellow jacket probably wants to steal the larva.
Yeah.
Because the yellow jackets are meat eaters.
Right. So yellow jackets. Bill, do you want to explain it?
Yeah. So yellow jackets are meat eaters, and so when you're outside,
let me get the camera on something good.
when you're outside at a picnic or when you're back to school and you're eating your lunch outside, that's what's coming by and surrounding you, trying to steal your food and antagonizing you is a yellow jacket because they're like a lion or a tiger. They're a meat eater, and they look at us as food. Whereas a honeybee is only interested in nectar and pollen, so they're not flying around you when you're outside eating, because honeybees are like a cow or a sheep. They're vegan. So when you think of see a yellow jacket, think of a lion or a tiger, and when you look at a bee, think of a sheep or a cow.
Right.
So let's do a rapid fire because we have a bunch of questions from
excellent.
our YouTube guests.
In the meantime, it might be fun it is fun to look at the bees. So I'm going to just let you guys look at the entrance as we answer the questions.
So someone asked what bees do over the winter.
By the way, I see pollen baskets happening on the bee. Can you see one right now that's like yellow on the back legs? You're going to watch them. They're bringing pollen in, and those are the foragers. You probably see it right there. So, okay. So while we're answering the questions, it's fun to look for that.
So, well, what do bees do? Bees do not hibernate. So here we're in Northern California and San Francisco. We don't get a winter. So my bees are super active all year round. But let's say we're in New York or New Jersey, or we're in North Dakota or South Dakota, and then you get a real winter. So what happens come October, the queen starts laying less eggs, and the population of the hive goes down because they're not able to gather food as much anymore. And the worker bees will actually live longer, and the queen will lay less eggs, And what happens in the wintertime, the bees will ball together on a frame. And they'll get real tight together to keep the larvae and the eggs warm and to keep each other warm. And how they do that is they flap their wings and they create friction, which creates heat. So they can keep, because bees like to be right around 96 degrees all the time. They don't like to be too hot. They don't like to be too cold. So they want to keep their inside of the hive that temperature so they can survive. So they won't fly around. Like bees won't fly. If it's under 50 degrees, like 50, 45 degrees, bees won't fly. If it's really, really super windy out, bees won't fly. If it's raining really hard out, bees won't fly. So they like today here, it's 65 degrees, the sun's out, there's no wind. This is perfect weather for the bees. And that's why when I opened up the hive, they didn't really notice me that much because there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of bees going in and out of the hive. So they're used to it.
Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get closer for you. Go ahead, Bill.
So they're used to it. So they didn't really notice me as much. But let's say it was 55 degrees and cloudy out and a little bit of wind, and I opened that hive up, they would be more protective and they would know more what's going on. So in the wintertime, short answer, bees, they don't hibernate. They're active, but they don't leave the hive. They're just staying in a ball, eating and keeping each other warm.
Do they sleep, by the way?
Bees officially don't sleep.
But they do rest.
They rest. It's more that they're inactive,
Right.
But they don't sleep. So why? All right, that's another thing. If it's dark out, generally they don't fly when it's dark out. They stay inside the hive and they keep each other warm. And then when the sun comes up and starts warming their hive up, that's when they're reacting. They'll go out starting to forage again.
Okay, so we have another question, and people are really curious about the queen. Some people are wondering how a queen is born and how they know to lay to lay it for a queen, and they're curious about royal jelly too.
Okay. Oh, royal jelly is like the coolest thing ever.
Okay, Bill, I'm just giving them another angle, so you have to come over, I think, here so they can hear you a little bit better. All right, I thought it might be fun to see bees. So sometimes you will get a crack in a hive, and then they kind of get in the habit of going in and out of that crack. So that's kind of what's happening here, and we put another entrance up top, excuse me. So it is fun. You can kind of get another view of the bees close up here. We'll watch them in action here. All right, Bill, I'm sorry.
So let's talk about queens.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Like we said before, there's only one queen in the hive. Now, how is the queen made? Actually, it's the worker bees decide what egg is going to be a queen. So what happens is, so let's say you saw this hive right here that you're looking at. It's really full of bees, it's full of honey. And if this was the springtime, the queen would be laying more eggs and the population would be really exploding. So what happens is they start running out of room. And when the hive runs out of room, which goes back to the question I never answered when you were talking about swarms, Deb.
Oh, sorry.
So what happens is that with this, the bees start running out of room and they're like, oh my gosh, like we're running out of room. We have to separate. We have to go find another place to live. So what happens is the worker bees will take an egg, a sterile female worker bee egg that the queen lays. And it has to be a newly hatched egg, 3 days old or less. So it has to be a larva that's 3 days old or less. And this plays into some of the questions about royal jelly. Royal jelly is kind of like human growth hormone, or it's like steroids. It'll take a sterile female worker bee and a larva, and the worker bees will feed that larva nothing but royal jelly. And there's all sorts of enzymes and vitamins and nutrients in that royal jelly, and it'll turn a sterile female worker bee larva into a fertile queen bee larva. Now you saw the picture of the queen bee before, and she's like double the size of a worker bee, and that's mostly her abdomen where she carries all her eggs and fertilized eggs to lay for the rest of her life. So in short, one, the worker bees decide which egg or which larva is going to be a queen. They do that by feeding that larva nothing but royal jelly. And so what they'll do, they'll take maybe 3 to 5 different newly hatched larvae, and they'll feed them royal jelly. So they'll have like 3 to 5 queens developing at one time, and the queen cell will look like a half of a peanut shell sticking off the frame. And what happens is the first queen that hatches, and it takes the queen roughly maybe 14 days to hatch. And that first queen that hatches, she'll go to the other queen cells and she'll destroy them. Because as we said earlier, there can only be one queen in a hive. And what she'll do is, before she hatches, like right before she's ready to hatch, what happens is half the bees, maybe one third to half the bees, will take off with the old queen. And that's what a swarm is. And it really looks biblical. It looks scary. But in all reality, the bees, all they're looking for is a new place to live. So when you see a swarm, it looks really scary. It's like they're clouding out the sun and they're flying around. And then you'll see them land in a bush or a tree or in the corner of a building. And they'll make a big ball, look like a football or a basketball. And in the middle of that ball will be the queen. And what the worker bees are doing is they're protecting the queen. And the bees you see flying back and forth and off are bees looking for a new place to live. And when they find a new place to live, they'll come back and tell the swarm, and then all the bees will take off and they'll go to that, like it'll be a hollow in a tree or maybe a crack in a building, and they'll go and live in between walls. Or maybe it'll be like an empty beehive like the one you're looking at now. It'll be an empty hive and the new bees will move into it. And then you go back to the old hive, and let's say half the bees are waiting there. The new queen will hatch. She'll fly out of the hive, and she'll go on a mating flight. And what happens is the drones and the queen, they'll mate mid-flight, and that's why the drones have to be so big and strong and fast. They're chasing the queen down in the air. They'll mate during the flight. The drone is such a violent act. They die in the act of mating, and then another drone will catch the queen. The queen will mate with like between 10 and 15 drones in one mating flight. All those drones die. She comes back to the hive, and how many eggs a day does she lay? You're right, 1,500. You guys are too smart. You're listening to me.
More questions, Haley?
Yeah, how is royal jelly different than honey? I think we talked about that.
Well, just to give you a quick synopsis of it, so all honey is basically dehydrated nectar that's mixed in with some enzymes that the bees have in their storage containers, their storage stomachs. Royal jelly is actually a substance totally different that's secreted by the bees, and it's like white and milky looking, and actually every single larva will get a little royal jelly, but queen larva will get nothing but royal jelly. So royal jelly is this thick milky substance that's secreted by the worker bees.
Someone asked, how can you tell how old they are?
Okay, good question. So I don't know if you noticed, but the nurse bees and the newly hatched bees are a little smaller than the forager bees. So bees do get a little bigger, not a lot, but it's a tiny bit. If you really look, you can notice like that the newly hatched and the nurse bees who haven't left the hive yet, they're a lot smaller than the older worker bees. So you can see that they're getting bigger. And then also, it's like the bees you see flying around going in and out of the hive, they're the older bees, they're the forager bees, and so they are, that's how I know the bees that are flying, they're the ones who are older also.
Someone asked, if two queens are born at the same time they hatch, what happens?
Well, let's see, if they're hatched at the exact same time, they can be considered sister bees, and they'll coexist for a while. That's pretty rare, but a lot of times if you have two queens in the hive, they'll duke it out and they'll fight. Now queens, bees can sting each other multiple times because they don't have the skin like mammals have, so their stingers don't stick in each other. So queens will fight to the death, and because there can only be one queen in the hive, and it's like Darwin's theory, the strongest queen will survive, and she'll defeat all the other queens.
All right, and then we're gonna have the rest of the questions answered on YouTube comments, but I wanted to take a second to talk about bees and why they're important. We know bees are important because they help make food for us, and without them, we probably wouldn't have a lot of our favorite fruits like apples and berries and melons and a pumpkin pie even. We wouldn't have jack-o'-lanterns. There's so many reasons we need pollinators, and it even goes beyond food. It's also oils and fibers for clothing and things like that. So bees are really, really important to us and for the environment. And so how can we help them? I think we mentioned that you could put a water dish out for bees because they get thirsty too. Another thing we can do is planting flowers. Bees love flowers. We mentioned they're like grocery stores for bees. It's where they get all of their ingredients. And so if we plant flowers, we're providing bees with not only habitat, but food as well. Another thing you can do is not use pesticides. And that can be in the realm of your food, so buying food that doesn't have pesticides from it, or not using pesticides in your yard or your garden. Another way to help bees is by shopping local. The closer relationship you have with your food and where it comes from is usually better for bees. So if you can go to the farmer's market, or if you can get a CSA community supported agriculture box, or if you can, as closely as you can get your food from home, the better. And then your honey. Trying to find local honey is really great for bees too. When you buy from a small beekeeper, they usually care for the bees well, and it has your local pollen in it, which a lot of people say is good for allergies. What other ways can we help the bees, Deb?
Well, they could do citizen science, and on our website we've got a couple citizen science projects that they could get involved with and become part of the solution of helping to save bees.
That's super fun. Another thing you can do is by leaving a part of your garden
Yep.
or lawn a little messy, because we know that honeybees like to live here in hives, but native bees, which there are 4,000 species of native bees in North America, they like to nest usually on their own. And so a place in your yard or garden that's all messy and has lots of places for them to make a nest, they love that. That's a great way to help. And native bees are hard to help too, because you can't just buy more. If your hive dies, you can purchase more bees in the spring. But with native bees, it's really difficult to help them. So setting up a habitat that they like is huge. You can also make a native bee house. And that is what our engineering lesson is about, which you can do from home with found objects and recycling stuff. So check out our virtual webpage for our virtual programs, our distance learning. And don't forget to register if you're a teacher or a parent, because that is a great way to find out more things you can do to help save the bees.
And what's our website?
Our website is planetbee.org. You can find out anything there. And another great place to learn about how to help the bees, for cute pictures of bees, and to find out about our programs